Welcome to Candid Leadership. I'm your host, Colonel Candace Frost. This week's segment includes a discussion on transformational leadership with Dr. Bina Patel. If this is your first time listening to the show, welcome. The purpose of today's episode is to provide listeners with insights from lessons on leadership with an organizational expert. Dr. Bina Patel is an expert on transformational paradigms, and she provides leadership executive consulting to C-suite teams on establishing healthy workplace cultures. In this episode, we'll discuss how transformational leadership works and encouraging your workforce to achieve their optimal performance. Dr. Patel also provides leadership and career coaching to upcoming leaders. In this episode, she highlights some of her counseling prowess and discusses directly how best to encourage millennials to find their fit as they enter the workplace. All right, I am delighted to have Bina with me today. And as I read her amazing bio already, we're going to discuss a couple of components of transformational leadership. So I think the first question most people would have, Bina, is what is transformational leadership?
So I want to thank you for having me on your podcast. This is such an honor. I have so much respect for you. So thank you so much. So, and then to get started on the question, to answer that, a transformational leader is essentially, it's a type of leadership that is unique to a personality. And what I mean by that is it's a personality style, it's a personality-driven leadership style. And it's having the ability to thrive under chaos and conflict and having embodying the characteristics. So being adaptable to the situation or any situation that arises, being flexible, leading with a vision, getting people on the same boat as you, and then making them execute accordingly. So these are unique qualities that not everybody can do, because we find that with change, it's very difficult to get people on board, first of all, to convince them that change is good, and to even furthermore convince them that adaptability is needed, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So case in point, like with COVID happened so quickly that we found individuals having a hard time adjusting to the fact that they were either going to work from home, not work from home, and then how do they make that initial adjustment? And a transformational leader is somebody who can actually say, it's okay, this change is happening, we're all part of it, and this is how I'm going to help you get adjusted to change. Let me teach you how to be flexible and adaptable with what you have going on at home. So it's that individual consideration given to each person, and then giving them the type of work that we know they will be able to complete despite the circumstances. So making change as easy as possible, and then slowly getting individuals to execute on the mission. Because ultimately that's what it comes down to for any organization, is to complete that mission and to help them lead with the vision. And the way transformational leaders do that is that they make these individuals part of the mission. They empower them. They say, I need your contribution because this is huge. This is where you come in, and this is what's going to help me, help us, and help the team do what we need to do every day, right? So everybody feels as though they have an ownership and a personal stake in executing the mission. So a transformational leader essentially is somebody who is able to not only individually separate and treat each person as a different person, as a human being for who they are, but really optimize on their talents to make change feasible, adaptable, and to really tell people, this is normal, change is normal, and this is why it's going to be easy for you. Let me help you.
And I think that you made some really great points when we're talking about kind of leading with a vision. Mm-hmm. I think those are things we in leadership talk about a lot, and we use keywords, but creating that vision is hard. And I know you gave me in the past a phenomenal example when you kind of talked about mental imprints, right? Mm-hmm. And you gave me an example of like the best moment of someone's life, when they score an A on the hardest test imaginable, or they're in a football game and they score the winning touchdown. Like that mental imprint is the vision and what they take forward with them. But unfortunately, within the workplace, sometimes we do the opposite to ourselves, where we take the absolute worst case scenario on the worst day, mm-hmm. and we make a mental imprint for that. So maybe if you could help me with, how transformational leaders sit down and start to really sculpt that vision, how best would you tell people to do that?
So the vision is the ultimate long-term outlook. It's like the long-term goal of where the company is going, where the organization is leading. Like, what is the goal? What is the ultimate achievement? Where are we heading? And the mission is like the wheels that's driving that cart, right? It's things that are moving in motion. Transformational leaders will understand what the objectives are of the organization, where they want to go in the future, and then create a plan, strategic plan to execute on that based on the mission. And in an effort to make sure that everybody has a stake in it, because it comes down to a team outlook, and that's what transformation leadership is about. They put the team first before they put themselves first, or they actually tell their team members, like, it's all about teamwork. And the best way to do that, and this is how well they do it, is that with that mental imprint, more people are going to remember the negative aspects of, oh my gosh, I messed up here, or I didn't do this, or I could have done better, or that maybe, that leader came down hard on them because they didn't contribute or didn't fulfill their part. We always remember the negative. As human beings, our emotions automatically turn to the negative, and we remember those imprints. What a transformational leader does is actually celebrate the little wins and the little moments by saying, this is awesome, you rocked it, and this is how you did it, I'm proud of you. So when a mistake comes up, they help them find the solution, or they empower them to say, well, if this happened, what do you think we could have done better? What do you think we can do better next time? Because remember, you did this so well the last time, maybe we could have used it here, but that's okay. We can use it again to do it this way better next time, because I know you've done it and I know you can do it. If not, let's look at it from an optimistic point of view. It's very encouraging, it's very positive, but it's not false positives. In a sense, I'm not saying that in a literal term, but they're genuine positive elements to help folks look into the future and create those mental imprints, which are mental memories that are connected to the emotions. So people will remember that and then execute on that better the next time.
And that's a great point you bring forward. Really, you don't have to be a Susie Sunshine all the time, really. You have to be able to listen to what other people are saying and then know your employees. I think that's the hardest part. People sometimes hesitate because they try and separate who they are from where they are with work. And at the end of the day, you're an amalgamation of everything that goes on with you. And I think we face this so much that we try to compartmentalize. So maybe you could talk to me a little bit about self-management and a manager that wants to do these things but feels hesitant because they feel they're confined to a space, or they don't feel like they're being their genuine self.
Yeah, I think it's really important. Sometimes, depending on your role and the environment that you work in, it's really hard to be yourself. So if you're a kind and humble person and the culture is not like that in the workplace, then it's really hard to lead with that type of style. But what I tell all managers and I tell all leaders, who you are. And you should never let yourself be otherwise. So despite what the culture is, I'm not saying don't fight the culture, but with your team members, it's okay to be honest and have humility and lead with that humility. Because when you do that, they will connect with you on a personal level, meaning they feel safe, that you've created that psychological safety, that mental safe space, and they will work harder for you to make sure that you succeed. So in that way, you are getting their buy-in. You as a supervisor are allowing yourself to be you ultimately. And then when you have to brief up or go up the chain, it's one thing that you can't be this candid self, right? Because of the way the culture may be, but it should not stop you from being who you are. Maybe you change your tone a little bit, but at the same time, let your team see who you are, because they will actually see you as that genuine person and do more for you and have more respect for you, not just as a supervisor or a manager, but really as a leader and as an individual who they look up to.
And Dr. Patel, that is an amazing point. And I would really say, in my own journey in national security and the things that I've seen, there are those leaders that welcome, and I don't want to call it dissent, but they welcome different opinions and they want to question their own assumptions. Those type of leaders, even though we may not agree on an aspect or a way forward, when they are allowing you to vocalize how you see the situation or your opinion, it makes for almost a trusting environment, but also a secure environment where you can really bounce ideas off of each other. And through that kind of collaborative working environment, I think we get better results. Kind of talking to another area we've talked about in the past, and you have a phenomenal ability to kind of bring this forward. Could you maybe speak in transformational leadership? Although we would love every employee to be that 100% A plus, knock it out of the park, best player, sometimes we just are dealt with a team that just doesn't have everybody at the same level. And as you're growing and you're growing them up and you're increasing their proficiency, sometimes we have to get to the accountability portion. Right. So I know in the past we've talked about that. Could you expand a little bit how a transformational leader holds others to account?
Yes, and that's a very good point. And every team has rock stars and superstars, right? Rock stars, I think, as Kim Scott in her book Radical Candor define, are individuals they're not necessarily slow, but they're just really good at one or two things, and they're good for those long-term projects. And then you've got superstars who can thrive under chaos and do just as well as a transformational leader, if not better, in terms of creativity and innovation. But that doesn't mean that you don't have somewhere in the middle, or you have somebody who's just a low-hanging fruit that's just not cutting it. It's really hard to motivate somebody. And as a leader, as any type of leader, it's really not up to us to ensure that it is up to us to ensure that person succeeds, but it's really up to them as well to meet you halfway if they want to succeed. And accountability, in my opinion, is necessary on all accounts. So a transformational leader can motivate, they can innovate, they can help that person, come forward and be positive and all those things. But if that person is not cutting it, then a performance improvement plan is one of the best ways to actually help that person. And the reason is it becomes more accountable in a sense, or the accountability becomes greater because it isn't black and white, it isn't paper. And the idea is not to get rid of that employee, but the idea is to help them improve. And sometimes when you're putting it on paper, like a formal process or optimizing on a formal process, people will get in line because they will know, oh my gosh, if I don't straighten up, this is it, I'm done. And it's not the mentality that we're here to get rid of people, but it's the mentality, let me help you get better because I know you can do better. You just need to do better. And you need to believe in that.
That ties me directly to a story of somebody I actually just spoke with the other day, and where he said, ma'am, I remember when we were downrange and you kind of, spoke with me late one night after I had worked on a project or worked on an intel report, and he turned it in and I just said, is this your best work? And I almost challenged him. I didn't have to kind of go to the lengths of counseling, or I just knew that employee well enough to know that almost just by saying a couple of things in the tone, I could make a marked difference and didn't have to go to those extreme lengths. And I think when you know your employees, you can do that to get to the point. Accountability is done in so many different ways, and it's really calculated into the objectives of the mission. Some parts of the mission are very clear and some are longstanding. And I think you just kind of spoke to when you have to get to the point of within the government performance improvement plan, or within business, some type of counseling or even talking to someone about a potential termination, just holding them and understanding accountability. So that was a deep dive into kind of a serious topic. I'd love to kind of explore transformational leadership with respect to relevancy. And we are in a very relevant portion of our history right now where approaching sensitive topics is really important, and not tiptoeing around those topics, but approaching that. So we have talked in the past, Dr. Patel, about empathy and how you show it and how you communicate with tone and attitude. How would you like to describe practical ways people could do that right now?
That's a great question. And thanks for bringing in what's happening right now, because the situation is very sensitive in nature. But it's been in the workplace for a very long time. And I think it's just now that, issues that occur in society do spill over into the workplace. We've seen that. And I find that with your leadership style, ma'am, you are a transformational leader. And I mean that sincerely. I've done some work with you. I've seen the way you motivate, but I've also seen the way what you mean by accountability. And having these topics and being sensitive to even employees who don't perform, and yet they may, find themselves to be victims of what's happening, and I mean that in a very sincere way, is to show sincerity. So one of the top things I tell people is don't talk about what's happening out there, but talk about how it makes them feel. All employees during this time want to talk about it with their managers. They're afraid to bring it up for a variety of reasons. They could think that, maybe it's a skin color issue, or it's a race issue. It could be a gender issue. And how do I bring this up? Or they're so angry and frustrated that they can't articulate that anger and frustration into words. So having an open dialogue, and I believe that leaders should set the tone here and say, we're going to take our next meeting that we have, team meeting, and talk about what's happening in society. And I want to hear from all of you. How does it make you feel? What if you could be the president for one day? What would you do differently? And let's talk about how that affects your ability to work here, whichever the organization is, because sometimes the organization itself has systemic issues. And if it does, then this is a great way to bring up what's happening in society and then sort of transition into the workplace culture. And again, the best way to do this is to create that psychological safety firsthand and set a couple of ground rules. Something like, there's no right or wrong response here. We all have emotions. And if you feel very emotionally strong about something and you want to talk to us about it, individuals will feel strong, very emotionally strong, because for most people, they're angry. They're angry at certain people. Their anger is perhaps misplaced. And we don't want to have, someone's anger. Let's say Jimmy is angry at Billy, and you don't want that situation to be fused at work, so that there's a workplace issue, like a mission related issue is used to sort of take the anger out on Jimmy, who may feel a certain kind of way because of what's happening in society. And then he's not in agreement with Billy, right? So the idea is that we don't want the anger misplaced. So setting these ground rules right off the bat. And as a leader, I encourage leaders to start the conversation, sort of like a therapy group, like an AA group, and saying, there are no right, wrong answers. I want each of you to have an open mind, and we're all entitled to our opinions. But that does not mean that your anger is misplaced or taken out on one of your coworkers, or judge. We don't want to judge one another, but have that dialogue. And then I would honestly say one of the best things to do is to have the manager participate as a participant, and let a third party or let an individual in your team facilitate this dialogue, somebody who's comfortable with it. So open it up to the team before you do it, and let them know ahead of time what the questions will be, what it'll entail, so everybody can come prepared. But again, here are the ground rules. And the reason is it creates a safe environment. It allows people to be creative, but more openly, people are more understanding of each other.
And Dr. Patel, you were phenomenal as an ombudsman when I've used your services before. I would highly encourage all of our listeners to reach out to you to seek her services out, because she was phenomenal in the fact that she helped connect people with each other. And I would encourage you, just as Bina had spoken about, when you talk to your direct reports and you create the ability to just in an enclosed area, even one-on-one, having those tough discussions, but also having the tone and the attitude. But most importantly, leaders, you've got to listen. And that's really hard, because so many times we are in a solution-oriented business where we take charge and we want to be the problem solvers. But some of these things systemically have gone on for hundreds of years, and we can't necessarily take charge and get our way through this. We have to step back and build on that mentally moving forward. I'm going to switch topics to something else when we're talking about rewards. When we've talked in the past, when you're looking as a transformational leader and you're trying to reward someone for something, what are ways that you think best people respond to different types of rewards?
Great question. I want to first piggyback on what you said about listening to listen. It's so hard to do, but it's a skill that has, it's only built by practice. If you just practice it, eventually you become a really good listener. You pick up on tone, and mind you, it's important for the leader to have a very neutral tone and a non-judgmental tone, but more of an empathetic tone, as you had brought up empathy earlier. So I wanted to just tie it all in, because it all falls in place, and to make that dialogue successful, So tangible rewards are great. Bonus money or days, vacation hours or whatever. Those things are awesome and somewhat expected, I guess. But more importantly, especially in the Intel world, what I've learned is that folks actually just want a simple good job, or I loved what you did, and they want it frequently because it's an affirmation, or it's a confirmation that they're on the right path, they're doing good, and it's actually a little bit of an encouragement every day. So think about getting a Hershey Kiss every day, and it fulfills your need for a chocolate, or that desire to have a little bit of chocolate just because you have that craving. It's the same thing here. So while I'm not saying that you should do it every day, but make it so that it's, in a meeting, you call them out and say, I really like the way so-and-so did this, or I really appreciate it, but give everybody a chance so that everybody gets a turn to be called out for something good that they did. But before you do that, it's really important to ask the people that you work, that report to you, how they want to be praised. Some people are very shy about it. They don't like to be praised in person, in front of a bunch of people, because they don't like that attention. They're more afraid that they will maybe get their employees, their colleagues jealous, or they just don't want to create that type of environment. So it's really important that you reach out ahead of time when you have those annual performance discussions at the beginning of the year, the fiscal year. How would you like to, if you do a good job, I want to call you out. Is that okay with you? Or is not, how do you want to go about it? And the reason I say that is I've had folks in Intel actually tell me, the workforce say, I don't like being called out in front of everybody because I'm scared that my peers may feel jealous, or that they contributed a lot to the project, but it could be unfairly done. So it's two things: ask your employees and be fair about it as the leaders. Just like we're parents, we can have favorite kids or favorite children, and it naturally happens. We're all human, or that we have favorite nieces and nephews, right? Like in my case, which
I
is
was
not
going to say,
good.
if my children are listening, I have no favorites.
Yeah.
You're 50-50. There you go.
I'm on that with you with my nieces and nephews.
There you go.
But yeah, I know, right? Because I'm like, this is being recorded. But we're closer to one than the other, and that's just because of the way people click. And it's no different in the workplace. It happens quite a bit. So folks do not want to be rewarded. This happened. I'll give you a case in point. We had quarterly awards, and one of the analysts was getting this huge award in the agency, and they came to me after the fact and said, how do I talk to my manager? Because while I'm grateful for the award, I just didn't like being up there in front of 200 people. Like, that made me mad. And it dawned on me, because I was at that ceremony, he didn't smile the entire time. And I thought maybe he was nervous, but he goes, no, I was actually angry. So while he didn't look angry, he just didn't look happy,
Right.
So as adults, I think it's really important for us to figure out what people want. But those rewards, the good job, or in email, especially in email, because it's in black and white, I really like the way you did this, excellent job, something like that, goes further from more, it counts as more than you can imagine. I have one more idea which actually works. I've had supervisors actually do handwritten notes, or even colonels and generals do handwritten notes. Those go a long way, because when these analysts have a bad day, or if anybody in the workforce has a bad day, they actually use that letter as motivation, and they look at it and they'll say, okay, no, this is why I'm here. So that in itself goes a very long way.
That is phenomenal. And that's very true. When I look across the workforce throughout my many years, I've seen people frame written notes that they've received from people that they respect. And it goes a long way to show how just taking time out, writing something down, or even for me lately, if I'm participating in something and I hear someone do a tremendous job in a small portion of an update or a briefing or a written product, I try and hunt down that person and shoot them a note. And then if I can, put everyone that they report to or somewhere within their chain of command on that note as well, so that not only do they receive the praise, but everyone else above them sees someone external to their organization saw what a great job it was, and they recognize them for that. So, Dr. Patel, I would love for you to really dive a little bit deeper into something that many people, and both the boomer generation, the Gen X generation, they discuss, and sometimes they discuss it privately, and sadly, sometimes they discuss it publicly and make jokes, but how we can build the bench. And this is the idea I've tried to use and expanding the ability for our millennial generation to come and join so many people in national security and be a part of the team and build that bench for working in either federal government or working in business so that they can grow their own potential. How do you target what you do towards that generation?
Thank you for that. This is such an important topic. And I want to tell you, and I mean it when I say it, you are a true transformational leader because, and not only do you check off all the boxes in terms of the characteristics, but you're already ahead of the game. And the reason that I say that is that in the federal workplace or even in the private workplace, a lot of the managers and leaders are trying to figure out, how do I deal with this generation? And more often than not, their frustrations are expressed, but you are 2 steps ahead by bringing them in and to get them acquainted with the other generations. We've got a variety of generations here. What I tell leaders is that millennials do need guidance. They need that role model that they're looking up to. One of the best ways to do that is to pair them up with a mentor who is more like them personality-wise, who thinks like them, but also is strong enough to guide them. Because when that relationship is formed and it's bonded, and they bond, that millennial will start to sort of mimic that individual. So if it's a baby boomer because they have more experience, make sure that person is not negative towards millennials, but it's more open-minded and lets them also think on their feet and gives them the opportunities to do the work. So that mentor-mentee relationship is necessary, almost to the point where the mentee, towards the end of their mentorship, for example, is going to let the mentor watch them lead. Because again, you're building transformational leaders here, future leaders, but you're optimizing on the millennial generation that is a little bit more touchy-feely, a little bit more needy in a sense. They want those affirmations. I'm doing a great job. How am I doing? They want that feedback, but that one-on-one will really help them grow. But it helps them also respect one another, but see each other in a different light. Because millennials coming in will also have this attitude, and I've seen this more often than not, unfortunately, because I'm a millennial, that they, and not in a bad way, I'm very proud of it, but I realized that, we're not all made alike, is that some people have the hustle in them, but they don't always have the hustle. That has to be built over time. And that's done with rewards, in a sense that when that pairing happens, it's like, yes, you're doing a great job. Yes, I can do this. And you give them those encouragements because, again, they're very emotional and things have to be done on their own time. But teaching them accountability on why it's important to be on time, things like that, goes a very long way, or why it's important to submit your work on time, building those milestones, because the millennial generation, and the younger they get, the harder it is to actually force them to meet deadlines, in all honesty, because they want to do things at their own time. Like I tell my sister, my sister and I are very close, and she's somebody who she's also a millennial, but probably in the cusp of the Gen X, because she's much older than I am. Every generation is born smarter. I find that they have a chip in their brain that's far more than what we have, right? And so I think giving them that space, that opportunity to be creative and innovative is necessary. And it shouldn't be that mentality that I had to work my way up and I'm going to make them work that way up. So it's very important for the baby boomer generation and the Gen X to think, well, if they're really smart and they're quick, then let's optimize on that talent. It's like putting them in special education for smart people, right? They do that in elementary school. It's no different here. If they're excelling, don't hold them to the same standard as everybody else. Let them excel and let them move forward faster than their peers, because they will be your true future leaders.
Dr. Patel, you have a phenomenal business, and could you just explain to me a little bit about this?
Yeah, my business is really working with small, medium-sized, and even corporations to show how to improve workplace culture. I truly believe, in my experience, in the probably 15 years I've been doing this, that we are losing talent at a faster rate than we can backfill this talent. And the reason is people are retiring. There's a gap in knowledge, and also there's a gap in hiring individuals quickly. And we know this in the Intel community. It's very hard to get people on board only because with the clearance issues and all that. But In the private sector, what we're finding is that companies are going through talent like water. It's like a waterfall. And not only are you losing that talent, you're wasting a lot more money, millions of dollars on just one individual walking out. So what I do is I consult with organizations. I do climate assessments. I find where the gaps are, provide very customized trainings on what does the brain do when people are in conflict? What does that lead to in terms of the bigger workforce? Because people feed off of each other. They feed off of the emotions. So I provide a consultative retention type service where it's a continuous improvement with making the workplace happy. And also coaching leaders, future leaders, as well as coaching current leaders like CEOs, C-suite employees on why it's important for them to adjust and be flexible more so than have that expectation from the bottom up. Because if they really want to thrive in their organization, they need to put people first.
Well, this has been a phenomenal conversation, and I'm really pleased to have you on Candid Leadership today. I definitely look forward to hearing about the growing business that you have, because your ability to continue to reduce conflict and make sure that talented workers continue to achieve success is emblematic in all that you've done, I've seen you do, and what you will do in the future. So thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast.
Well, I truly appreciate it. And on the last note, I tell companies all the time, my job is to help you save money against labor lawsuits. And the best way to do it is to put people first. So ultimately, those are the rewards, the ROI. So, and I thank you so much. Yeah.
No problem. People first. We can end with that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. This was great. And I really appreciate this.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Candid Leadership. I hope you walk away with steps for yourself to become a transformational leader. Whether it's listening to your employees with an understanding of empathy or figuring out how best to reward each person. Dr. Patel gave great advice on how to welcome millennials into your workplace as well. I welcome all of you to check out my website at colonelcandid.com. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram and all your favorite social networking sites at Colonel Candid. Links to this episode will be in the show notes. Thanks again for listening, and keep leading.